Welcome to NFL World, where NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. And the first round of the NFL draft is over, as it was, as you could expect, one of those drafts where you think you know it all until you don't. So let's recap what happened in round one. Let me see if I can 100% find it. Let me check here. Okay. Okay, here we go. But as this loads, I will continue talking. So everyone knew in their mind that Caleb Williams was going to be the number one overall pick. He took 130 visit, that was to Chicago. Everyone knew. So when he got picked, it was like, okay, we knew that. The Jaden Daniels one, I was very confident in, even despite this report of it went terribly. They met and it went terribly. No, remember, the best thing I can say is remember when the Dolphins tried to do that with Tua, and they came up with the idea of, let's say he got like a 13 on the Wonderlic test, which is a test that's not even based about football, it's just based about scenarios. And they said, well, let's say he had a 13. Most quarterbacks, by the way, will get high 20s or low 30s to this test. Also, only one quarterback has ever actually finished the test and actually had a 48 out of 50, and that was Ryan Fitzpatrick. Just a side note. But I didn't believe it because I was like, yeah, Drake May doesn't seem like their style. JJ McCarthy, they're not going to pick him that early. It just makes sense for Jaden Daniels. It fits what they want to do. And that's who they picked. Jaden Daniels. Okay. The Patriots took Drake May, which, side note to this, who watched Belichick's reaction to the Patriots selecting Drake May? That to me was fascinating. That to me was very fascinating. And he's like saying, look, there's good parts of him. He's a good player. He's like kind of like Josh Allen at times, where he can make these great throws, but he misses wide open people. And they shows a play where there's two guys open or open-ish in the NFL, and he decides to throw to the guy in double coverage, or he decides to get off the wide receiver too early and ends up getting sacked when the guys that's as open as you're going to get in the NFL. So, but I thought that was interesting. But Drake May to the Patriots, I knew that one was going to happen too. The Cardinals luck into Marvin Harrison, Maserati Marvin. This was, again, not a shocker. We all knew it was going to go three quarterbacks and then a wide receiver. Except this is where it gets a little sidetracked. The Chargers are on the clock. They need wide receivers. I was saying they're going to go get Malik Nabers. You lose Mike Williams, you lose Keenan Allen. You need a wide receiver in this first round. They went another direction. Joe Alt. Now, they already had Rashawn Slater, who was an all-pro left tackle. So, and Joe Alt only played left tackle. So, at Notre Dame. So, maybe they have Rashawn Slater switch sides. Maybe they go and try Joe Alt a different side. Maybe they'll wait. I have no idea. But then it was brought up during the telecast because I was watching the NFL Network telecast because I just don't prefer the ESPN telecast. They go and said, well, when Jim Harbaugh got to Stanford, and then when he went to Michigan, he went and became like everyone else was trying to get these explosive offenses, big time wide receivers, big time quarterbacks that have a strong arm. And no, Jim Harbaugh had a vision of we're gonna ground and pound, we're gonna beat you up, so to speak. We're gonna build the trenches up, and that's what they did here, bring in Joe Alt, who's best tackle probably in this draft. Now, the Giants went, they select Malik Nabers. Thought they could go J.J. McCarthy right here. They chose to not go in this direction. Now, Tennessee, they probably were like, oh my gosh, what do we do? They go and select J.C. Latham, who only played right tackle. He's a little slow out of the box at times, but they're going to try and switch him over to left tackle. Him and Skoronski. That if that works, that's one of the best left side tandems that we'll see in the NFL. Now, the shocker of the night, and probably the shocker of the draft, to be honest with you, the Falcons went and select Michael Penix Jr. Now, I'm going to go away from analysis for a little bit as I realize my mic's not even on. Hang on. There we go. That's better. There we go. That's better. So to recap, Caleb Williams goes 1, Caleb Williams goes to the Bears at the number 1 pick. Jaden Daniels goes 2 to the Commanders. Drake May goes 3 to the Patriots. Marvin Harrison Jr. goes 4 to the Cardinals. Joe Alt goes to the Chargers. Malik Nabers goes to the Giants. J.C. Latham, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, goes 7th to the Titans. There's a moment of real that's going to come with this. What were the Falcons doing? What were they doing? I thought this was Dallas Turner. I honestly thought this was Dallas Turner. You could not have told me Dallas Turner was not going to go to Atlanta. I just wouldn't believe you. I thought they were going to go edge rusher. Maybe they go Jared Verse, something. They chose to go Michael Penix Jr., which doesn't make sense. And then there was conflicting reports. Basically, they all figured out that the Falcons did call did call Kirk Cousins, said, hey, we're thinking about taking a quarterback in the first round. But they said that when they were on the clock. Like, it's not like they told him 2 weeks ago. So he really didn't have a lot of time. But even still, like, at that point, like, either don't tell him at all because you're on the clock, or tell him a week's in advance because Penix was going to be there. And Michael Penix, a lefty, so he has a smooth motion. The motion's fine. Same thing with Tua. The motion's fine. That's not the issue. The deep ball's good. Don't worry about it. Penix's biggest issue is I think he doesn't work very well with not a clean pocket. When the pocket is not clean, he seems to struggle. That's all I'm gonna say. Number 9, the Chicago Bears back on the clock. They took Roman Duzier, and I thought that was a great pick for them. Because as much as you say, well, yeah, they don't need another wide receiver, you lose Darnell Mooney. Giving you another weapon's not going to kill you. And now you look at that team, you think Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Roman Duzier. That's a great wide receiver and quarterback core. They are really building around Caleb Williams and building this offense, which I love to see that happen. Next up, the Vikings, who traded up, by the way. They traded, let me see. They traded up with I think they traded up one spot. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe I'm losing it a little bit. Anyway, they go and draft J.J. McCarthy. Best place for him to land, by the way. And a shocker in many ways because that's 4 quarterbacks in the top. Like, let me make sure I have this number right before I say it. Yeah, it's 4 quarterbacks, or 5 quarterbacks in the top 10. And 3 oh, 4 of the 5 all go to NFC teams. J.J. McCarthy, you knew this they were gonna take a quarterback. Was McCarthy gonna fall that far? And he ended up, so it worked. Good pick by the Vikings, something that they needed at their position. Next up, the Jets. Actually, yes, they did trade the Jets 1 spot. There you go. Where they took Olu Fashanu. Keep or Fashanu. Fashanu is how it's said. I'm sorry. Little surprised they took a tackle. Not he's a very powerful tackle, but I wanna look at let me look at the Jets depth chart for 24. Here we go. At tackle. Because I think I'm losing it a little bit, but I think I'm right at the same time. So give me a second. Okay. Let me then check this. Okay. So it doesn't show it, but the reason I was shocked by it was because the amount of tackles that the Jets have now. They still have Dwayne Brown, who's a little bit older. They still have uh actually hang on, let me make sure I have that 100%. Yeah, it doesn't say he's okay. So yeah, I just want to make sure they had it. Okay. So they still have Dwayne Brown, who's 38. Uh, Tyron Smith is still there. He went there as a free agent. He's 33. They bring in Morgan Moses, who's 33, who could also play that tackle if they had to, but he'll be right tackle. Then they bring in Olunu Fashanu. I keep saying it wrong. It was just a shocker. That's all. But I was surprised that they went off to tackle at 11. Next up with the Broncos, they took Bo Nix. I mean, like, there's a lot of good, there's a lot about Bo Nix. He's better than he was at Auburn, but it wasn't a great offense in Oregon. It was very short stuff, one read and let's go. And that's what they did. And maybe Sean Payton thinks he can mold him, and that's what they went with. But as I'm thinking of this now, that's 2 Oregon Duck quarterbacks in the AFC South, with Justin Herbert also being from an Oregon Duck. Next up was the Raiders. They took Brock Bowers. They drafted Michael Mayer last year. They say, okay, let's take Brock Bowers. He'll probably be more like the off the line tight ends. Won't be really the blocker, will be more of a wide receiver kind of player. Next up, Saints, they take Taliese Fuaga. I think I pronounced that right, out of Oregon State. Look, the best way I can put it, Trevor Penning's not been the greatest, and Ramczyk, I believe that's how you say his name, he may not even play football again. So, Fuaga, that makes best sense to me. So a good pick by the Saints. The Colts at 15, they took Laiatu Latu. Could have taken a quarter, could have taken a wide receiver, they could have taken an offensive lineman. They went edge rusher because they got to chase down CJ Stroud. And Laiatu Latu, who was medically retired, transfers to UCLA, played actually really well the last 2 years that he was there, and is in the position he is. Next up is the Seattle Seahawks at 16. They took Byron Murphy. What a tandem that's going to be, by the way, for the Seattle Seahawks. You traded for Leonard Williams last year, and that was a big improvement. And then you bring in Byron Murphy, which is another big improvement. I love this pick. You gotta stop the San Francisco 49ers from running the football. Byron Murphy eats up blocks. You're gonna stop the run in its tracks. You're not gonna be able to run inside. That's the goal. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings traded up for Dallas Turner. They were at pick, I think they were at pick 28th. No. Pick, yeah, maybe pick 28th, I think. And they took Dallas Turner. The fact that he was still on the board at 17 was amazing to see. It was just one of those drafts. He took 15 offensive players before he had a defensive player. And that was the Laiatu Latu who got drafted. So Dallas Turner goes to Minnesota. A bigger guy. To put this in perspective, he's bigger than Nolan Smith. That's the best way I can say. He's a little more powerful than Nolan Smith is. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals, who needed an offensive line help, they took Amarius Mims, the tackle out of Georgia. A lot of people saying Amarius, it's Amarius. It's how he says it, it's Amarius. Unless he's changed the pronunciation of his name, it's been Amarius. Mims. Guy hasn't played a whole lot, but has shown that he can play. The issue is he played 200. He only played about 300 snaps this year. They said in the thing that he played 800, a little over 800. He played basically 300 this year, and he got hurt. And then he got hurt at the combine. But unreal athlete, 6'7", I think 37.5-inch arms is like what Thomas Smith is, and he's like 37, which is it's ridiculous. To put that in perspective, as an offensive line, and especially as an offensive tackle, you want 34-inch arms or more because you want to keep the defender as distant as possible so he doesn't get into your chest. So you can't really do anything. And Amarius Mims can do that. Now, the advantage that the Bengals have, you bring in Orlando Brown, you bring in Trent Brown from the Patriots, so you actually can bring Mims along slowly, and hopefully he doesn't have to play this year. Next up, the Rams, who have welcome back to the first round of Rams. They haven't been in the first round since 2016. It's 7 years ago. put that in perspective, that's when they drafted Jared Goff. Sean McVay wasn't even a head coach yet. Still a wide receiver coach. They went and took Jared Verse, the kid out of Florida State. Great talent, and this was right where he was about to be picked anyway. This was his best value, so it's a great pick by them. Not much to say about it. The Pittsburgh Steelers go offensive line. They select Troy Fautanu, the kid out of Washington. He can have great versatility. He has 34-inch arms, but showed he could play tackle, showed he could play guard. So he has great versatility. And one of the biggest issues for Pittsburgh has been their offensive line for years now. This gives you a great pick. One of the shocker ones, I think, the Dolphins are on the clock. They select Chop Robinson, the kid at Penn State. I thought they were going to go offensive line here. Graham Barton, Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. No, they went Chop Robinson at Penn State. It's a little bit of a shocker because they had so many defensive ends in Miami last year go down with Achilles injuries. Jalen Phillips, I believe, was the one on Black Friday. Just went by. And so I was a little surprised that they went this high to go get him, but a good pick. Next up was the Eagles. They went and took a player I didn't even think was going to be still on the board at this time, Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo. Ran the fastest at the combine. He was the fastest cornerback at the combine. This was a speed guy. And this was I think a reason they went with him because I think they saw what happened with James Bradbury last year and how sometimes he couldn't even keep up in man coverage. Bringing a guy like Quinyon Mitchell, you know he's going to be able to keep up. You just hope the skills are there. Next up, at 23, was the Jacksonville Jaguars. They select Brian Thomas Jr., the kid out of LSU, the other kid out of LSU. He can fly, basically. It's remarkable. He's so well built. He's tall, he's fast, he has strong hands, and he wins at the races. Like, that's unbelievable. You don't see that very often when you see a guy who is as big as he is, as strong as he is, and as fast as he is. You just don't see it. And he goes to Jacksonville. It's a great pick. It's going to be hard to tackle him. Now at 24, the Dallas Cowboys traded their pick to the Detroit Lions. We'll get into that trade a little bit later. Lions trade up from 29 to go to 24 and select Terrion Arnold, the cornerback out of Alabama. Can play slot corner, can play outside corner. The issue with the Lions, the only issue was their secondary all year long. They couldn't figure out that second cornerback position, but otherwise they were excellent. Terrion Arnold, again, inside, outside, great hands, great instincts. The Lions draft very well. They bring in instinctive players, but they bring in players that love football. And that's what Terrion Arnold brings. So it's a great pick by the Lions. Next up, the Packers, they select Jordan Morgan, the offensive lineman out of Arizona. Can play tackle, but his arm length's a little short, probably could play some guard. A little bit of a shocker. Thought they would go Graham Barton because people were gonna kick him inside. But no, they go Jordan Morgan. At pick 26, this was the one I dreaded because I was like, yeah, if he goes here, he's gonna go there. And what are the Cowboys doing? is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Graham Burton, who played tackle at Duke, had short arms, were going to be kicked inside anyway, so he'll play center. This was the worst thing that could have happened for Dallas, I think, at pick 26. And at pick 27, it starts to get worse for the Cowboys as the Arizona Cardinals are back on the clock. They take Darius Robinson, played defensive tackle for the most of his career at college. Goes, they kick him out the defensive end, has an excellent year. A little bit of a tweener, which means he's not exactly big, he's not exactly small. He's kind of in the middle. He has the athletic traits of a defensive tackle, but he has the speed of a defensive end, meaning he'll play defensive end for Arizona. Next up, another trade. The Kansas City Chiefs, I don't know why I was about to say Arizona. Kansas City Chiefs trade with the Buffalo Bills. They trade up to 28 and select Xavier Worthy, the fastest wide receiver in the draft. This was all because last year they had to play small ball. They did not want to do it. They had to, and it really affected what they were going to do. And that's why they took Xavier Worthy here. I thought he would fall to them at 32, and they end up jumping to make sure they get him at 28. It was a great pick by them. 29, the Dallas Cowboys traded 24 to get to the Detroit 29. Along in that trade was the Cowboys sent a 7th round pick and their 24th pick to the Lions for the Lions' 29th pick in the first round and a 3rd round pick in this draft, which is, I think, pick 73. To also be fair, the Cowboys sent picks, the 7th round pick, not of this draft, but of the next draft. And if you look at the trade value chart, because that's how all these teams grade it, it says that would equal about 100 points, which is how you grade a trade, is this pick or this player for this pick or this player equals this many points. It tells you if you're getting great value for this. We could send you a 4, which would equal like 150 points, but we deem this player as 200 points, so we're willing to make this trade. Or we're not willing to make this trade because this player only, by our points is 100 points, and you're making us go 140 points or whatever. But for the Cowboys, that trade would have equaled 100, pick 100, and they got pick 73. So great value. A little bit of an overpay for the Lions, but they got the player they wanted, so it's all good. The Cowboys, they select Tyler Guyton, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. I'm kind of, as the night had kind of went along, I bought into this as a position. Because there's good things and bad things about Tyler Guyton. Let's start with the good. 6'7" and 3/8, so he's tall. 34 plus inch arm, so he has good arm length. Strong, powerful guy who, when he gets his placement right, you won't get close to your quarterback. They won't get close to the quarterback. Did play on the right side at Oklahoma, but because their quarterback was a lefty, I don't think it's still a blind side, so I don't think it's as much of a transition as one would fear. Now, the issues to Tyler Guyton are also, by the way, pretty good at pass blocking. Did not give up a sack when he was playing. The issue, hasn't played a lot. Sometimes his hands get a little sloppy. His initial punch is too low, and his footwork, well, it needs work, as well as run blocking. But that's every offensive tackle who's transitioning into the league. So there's good, there's bad. You're taking an upside pick. A lot of people are going to say this is a kid from Oklahoma. The Cowboys always draft someone for Oklahoma. Not true. If I remember correctly, this is the third or fourth player the Cowboys have drafted from Oklahoma in about 15 years. So it's not often that they do this. It's not as much as people would think. Um, so at 29, I like the value. It was one of those classes of if you didn't get the initial guy you wanted, that was going to be issue S. Was I mad at the trade down? No, because you need picks for the Cowboys. You need picks to do like what Minnesota did, where they jumped up and grabbed the guy they wanted in a Dallas Turner and in the trade for JJ McCarthy. So I'm not against it. Did I think they were going to go Graham Burton? Yes, I thought that was evident if he fell there. Yes, and I thought if not, Jackson Powers-Johnson. Apparently, they didn't like what they saw in the medical. That's frustrating. I also thought Zach Frazier, maybe he falls to them in the second round. I would be 100% shocked if Jackson Powers-Johnson and Zach Frazier for the Cowboys in round 2. I would be 100% shocked because I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't. I don't see it. Could, but I'm 99 and like 9/10 sure it won't. But anything could happen. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens. They select Nate Wiggins, who I thought was one of the better cornerbacks of the draft. Little thin, 173. He actually went up to 180 at his pro day, so we're good. But a little thin, great hands, great skill level, understands how to track the football, all of it. This is a great pick for the Ravens, a team that they pride themselves on good corners. I think they got another one right here. Next up is San Francisco 49ers. They selected Ricky Percival, the kid out of Florida. A little bit of a shocker. I thought they were going to go offensive line. I had them going with Christian Mahogany out of, believe it was out of USC, but I'm not 100% sure. Doesn't happen. And finally, Carolina Panthers actually traded with the Bills. So the Bills have the first pick in round 2, which is actually a big move by the Bills, by the way. If you don't know what you're going to do, trade out of the first round. I thought Dallas was going to do something similar to that. They did not. They value their fit, your option. I get it, but this Carolina Panthers select a kid from the Carolinas, from South Carolina, and Xavier Legette. Legette, that people thought he could sneak into the first round, maybe be the first or second player in the second round. He ends up sliding in at the last second at pick 32. So, who was I surprised that was not selected? Jackson Powers-Johnson, number 1. Adonai Mitchell. Oh, I should say AD Mitchell. It's AD Mitchell. I was kind of surprised that he was not selected. I thought I had in my mock draft, I had Worthy and Mitchell going back to back. The fact that didn't happen, then he didn't even crack the top 32 was a little bit of a shocker. What else? A couple offensive linemen, but nothing crazy. in terms of position base, is what you could have anticipated. Besides the Atlanta Falcons, everyone kind of went with what they needed. Quarterback first 3 picks, wide receiver the 4th pick. Everyone kind of went with what they needed. So it was not exactly a shocker besides the Michael Penix one. And to me, the Fashanu one was a little bit of a shocker. And the fact that Dallas Turner was at 17. But other than that, it was kind of where it went. And for a lot of these teams, like if you look at like a team like the Bills, you trade in, you get 2 picks in the second round. That's big. When you like the Cowboys, you get the same thing, 2 picks in the third, where like before you didn't have that. Now you do. If you trade back again, you get more, get assets, get what you gotta get, and see. In the draft, it's more like it's kind of like this. If you go to Vegas and you have $10,000 you're working, you got 10,000. Boom. Here's my 10 grand. Here you go. 10,000 is good, but if you go and you don't have enough chips, it's gonna be different compared to a person who uses 15 or 20,000. They're gonna have more. You got more opportunities to win. That's what this is. The draft is like the lottery in many ways. The more tickets you have, the more chances you have to win. It's that way. The more picks you have, the more chances you have on selecting a player. Don't be surprised if the Raiders draft a quarterback also, because that was Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell is not exactly what I'm looking for. But that's the end of round 1, day 1 in the NFL draft. Rounds 2 and 3 are tonight, followed by rounds 4 through 7 on Saturday. We will have it completely covered on the NFL draft on Monday, so stay tuned for that. And me and Lucas on the What a Play podcast will cover the NFL draft in its entirety on the podcast next week. For NFL World, I'm Jacob Peeper.